A good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Bamidbar, the Shabbos before Shavuos. Bamidbar is all about the counting, and the simple message of the counting and of the walking in the midbar and the walking in the desert is the reminder that every single one of us is important. Every single one of us counts, and that though there's this entity called Klal Yisrael, there's a mispar. There's also shemos. There's also names. Every single person is critical. But this Shabbos, like really the whole 49 days, the whole Sphira, and especially now this week, moving into that last stretch before Kabbalas HaTorah, it's not before we commemorate the giving of the Torah, but before we relive the giving of the Torah. Shavuos is actually that moment that we actually relive and we re-experience the giving of the Torah, and we get to reconnect ourselves to Torah, to rejuvenate our connection and our excitement and enthusiasm and our commitment to Torah. To do that, there needs to be a preparation. And what exactly is that preparation, the final stretch? What are the things we need to look at? So if we look at the Kriyas Torah for Shavuos, it says, B'chodesh HaShlishi, on the third month, it says, B'nai Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim, when the Jewish people left Egypt, to the month of Sivan. B'yoyim hazeh, on that day, on Rosh Chodesh, Bo Midbar Sinai, we came to Midbar Sinai, we came to the Sinai desert. Then the Torah tells us, seemingly superfluous pasuk, Vayisu meRefidim, it says that we traveled from Refidim. Well, of course we traveled from Refidim. The previous Parsha talked to us about the fight with Amalek, and that fight with Amalek happened in Refidim. If we're going to get somewhere else, if we're going to the desert, the only way to get to the desert is by leaving Refidim. And therefore, of course, it's understood. Vayisu meRefidim. So why would the Torah tell us, Vayisu meRefidim, that we left Refidim? It's obvious. Then the Torah tells me, Vayavo Midbar Sinai, they came to Midbar Sinai. But the Torah just told me, Vayom hazeh bo Midbar Sinai. We know that we're there already. Now we're telling me again, Vayavo Midbar Sinai. It sounds like a triptych. We left here, we go to there, we spend a few minutes here, and then we go to there. What's going on here? Vayachanu b'midbar, we rested in the desert again with the midbar, with the desert. Vayichan sham Yisrael neged har. And Israel rested there under the mountain. But when you say Israel, you're talking about the entire Jewish people. It should say Vayachanu Yisrael, and they rested there. But instead, Vayichan Sham Yisrael, Vayichan in the singular. So we have to wonder why it's telling us that we left Refidim. We have to wonder why it's telling us that we came to Midbar Sinai, and why it's telling us that Vayichan, that we rested in the singular under the mountain. The Or Chaim HaKadosh says that these are the three preparations that a person needs to go through in order to be able to rejuvenate their connection to Torah. The first thing is that Vayisu meRefidim, you got to leave Refidim. The Torah is not telling us about traveling. The Torah is not telling us about physically picking yourself up and walking from one place to the other. That's obvious, because when it tells you you arrived there, you know you left there. But what the Torah is telling me is that if you're going to arrive there with yourself, if you're going to arrive there with your fullness, then you're going to need to Vayisu meRefidim. You're going to need to leave Refidim. You're going to leave your weakness. See, Refidim was called Refidim because it was Rafu Yadayim b'Torah, because our hands became weak in Torah. Now, we hadn't been commanded Torah yet. We hadn't been given anything yet. This was pre-matan Torah. But nevertheless, our commitment to wanting to be involved and engaged in Torah, our interaction with Torah, with our spirituality, with our ruchnius, that became weak. And it was only when it became weak that Amalek was able to get to us. Because when it was strong, when we had amazing faith, amazing connection to God, amazing loyalty to God, there was nothing that an Amalek could do to us. Amalek was suffix, Amalek was doubt. Amalek was not able to see in anything physical, anything spiritual. It wasn't able to see the magic behind life. And they got me to stop seeing the magic behind life. Moshe Rabbeinu is sitting up on top of the mountain and we're fighting with the Amalekites. When Moshe Rabbeinu's hands are up, the Jews are winning. When the hands are down, the Jews are losing. Our rabbis explain, what was that? Did the hands of Moshe Rabbeinu make war? No, what's happening is that when the Jews were looking up and recognizing that it was all about God and we were living in the world of God, so then we were incredibly successful. And the moment that our hands dropped down, that Moshe's hands dropped down, that means that our eyes were looking down. Our eyes weren't seeing the magic in life. We were just seeing the simple physical things in front of us. That's when destruction happened. When we became weak, when we couldn't hold up our hands anymore, we couldn't hold up our eyes, our heads anymore. When we couldn't look up towards the mountains, we couldn't look up towards the heavens. that's when everything was destroyed. Everything got destroyed. We want to rejuvenate. We want to connect ourselves to Torah. We got to stop being weak. We have to stop being lazy. We have to stop being without that kind of strength, that ability to be able to see the magic in life. We got to re-strengthen our ability to be able to see behind the surface, and to be able to recognize how awesome and amazing things are and how they're connected to God. That's number one. Then v'yachnu Bamidbar. We have to come to a desert. Very difficult to accept Torah when you think that you're the be-all and end-all. Very difficult to accept the Torah and its interpretations and its applications of the rabbis when you think you know as well as they do. When you have a certain gaiva, a certain haughtiness, a certain yoara, when you see yourself really in the center of life. Very difficult to be able to receive. Very difficult to be able to receive a Masorah from generations past. Very difficult to be able to receive a Masorah from God himself. Because I'm bigger and I'm better. Therefore, a person has to be Mesa Matzah Bamidbar. A person has to make themselves like in a desert. Humble, simple. In that humility and simplicity is beauty. But a person has to make themselves humble and simple. And then Torah can flow. And when Torah is not flowing, a lot of times because we're holding on to our own vision of ourselves and our own opinion, our own thought that we're definitely right. And it doesn't flow. When we give that up, when we say maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not quite the way I see it, all of a sudden, the pipes are open. And that ruchnius, that spirituality, that godliness just flows into our lives. But then we need the third preparation. Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Har, and Rashi says, what does it mean that Israel slept on the mountain? Yishachad b'levacha, like one person with one heart. You need other people. No man is an island. You can't do it alone. You need to have people around you that are focusing on the same thing, that are going in the same direction, that are committed to the same things, that have growth in their minds, that have values, the same values that you want to develop, that you want to grab onto. It's got to be ki yishachad b'lev. It's got to be all one organism operating in the same way. Those are the three things that are necessary. Leaving our weakness, getting a little bit of strength, committing ourselves to God and to godliness, making ourselves humble, and connecting ourselves with the right kind of people, being in the right kind of sviva, the right kind of atmosphere. Because that's the way it's going to uplift us and recommit us to Torah. In the last dash, the Shavuos, it's got to all be about that desire to recommit, that desire to be strong, that desire to be humble, and that desire to be connected to others. And when we've got that, then we've got the foundations that are necessary to stand Shavuos morning at the apex of Shavuos, the whole tachlis, the whole purpose of Shavuos, to hear Kriyas HaTorah, and to hear Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am the Lord your God, to hear the 10 Commandments, and to see ourselves as if we are recommitting, reconnecting, and reaccepting that Torah. And that'll uplift us and carry us through the year until the next chance that we have to renew our release on life, until the next chance that we have to stand at the foot of Mount Sinai and to be able to recommit and reconnect ourselves to Torah. May this Shavuos be truly that moment of reconnection and recommitment, that moment where we're born anew and we're on fire from the experience of not having talked about and remembered just thinking about the giving of the Torah, but we have reenacted that moment, and we have lived through that moment and become reinvigorated by that moment. Everybody should have an amazing, beautiful Shabbos, an amazing, beautiful Shavuos. We'll see you on the other side, rejuvenated, reinvigorated, recommitted, filled with the fire of Torah. Have a good Shabbos.